But thank you, Richard, for the information. I was an orderly for a while, and except we were married already before I became an orderly, so it didn't lead me to any new wife. Well, it didn't lead me to a new wife. That's good. And we just celebrated our 50th anniversary this year, so we kind of we went down with you for years, and then had ours this year as well. We're here this afternoon to celebrate the life of Ruth Loretta Baxter, who went to be with her Lord on Monday, December 28th, 2020. She and Richard were married for 51 years, as he's mentioned, and had one son, Jeffrey, or Matthew, as he would have been, I guess, who has helped Richard care for her during this time, too. We're grateful that family and friends can be here today, even in the midst of the COVID crisis, and as Richard said, some are hesitant to even come, and all of us who are here, apart from me right now, are masked as well. Carol and I, as Richard said, have known both he and Ruth since our Fort Wayne Bible College days. We returned to the States in 1983 after teaching in Jamaica down in Kingston, and I began to teach at Fort Wayne Bible College, and then, as Richard mentioned, we worked together, especially on the short-term mission trips that the school took. And as he mentioned, Carol worked with Ruth I think they were at that time, it was in the ICU, intensive care unit during that time. And then when Richard began to go down to Jamaica in 1998, we were encouraged by that. We had been there for 9 years, and now he picked up kind of in a little different area, but in the same way that we were involved. And we knew the island, but we'd actually didn't know the part of the island that Richard worked in. And as he mentioned, we got a chance to go down in 2018 and see the ministry there. We're excited then to see him be involved in that. And they've been down there since 1998, and it was great to see his and Ruth's love for the Jamaicans, but I think it was even returned more in their love for him. And he was just mentioning that about every day at 7 o'clock he gets a call from one of the Jamaicans down there to encourage and to speak with him. At the time we went down in 2018 with Ruth, she was on oxygen, and so she wasn't able to always do everything that we were involved in, but we knew that she was back at the house praying for us when we were out, and actually she was able to do a lot more than I even thought she would be able to do when we were down there. And I'm sure she's made, those of you who are here, she's made an impact on your lives as well. And in a little while, actually, we'll give anyone who wants to an opportunity to just share maybe something about your relationship with her, or how she's impacted your life, or how the two of them have impacted your life. I think I'm going to stay pretty close to what I've written so that I don't get sidetracked and go off in another direction, which I can easily do. So, as students who've had me, good to see you, Josh, and Buck, too. So, in a number of funerals that I've attended, the passage of Scripture that is most often found inside the memorial card or folder is the 23rd Psalm. And Richard mentioned to me that it was on Ruth's memorial card as well. It's often used for good reason, for it's probably one of the most beautiful and most comforting psalms ever written. David knew what it was like to experience sorrow. He'd been rejected and hunted down by Saul. He'd lost one son in infancy, and another son rebelled against him and sought to take his throne. It was probably during one of these crisis periods that David's mind went back to the days of his youth when he served as a shepherd for his father's sheep. He likened the Lord to a shepherd and composed this psalm. It's a psalm of comfort and hope to the sorrowing, and for that reason it's addressed to each one of us here this afternoon. In it, David speaks of his relationship with the Lord, his shepherd, and then of the result of that relationship. The first thing mentioned is our relationship with the Lord. David says, and I'm sure we're very familiar with this, "The Lord is my shepherd." Our relationship is both an intimate personal relationship and a dependent pastoral relationship. It's a personal relationship that's reflected in David describing the Lord as my shepherd. It's a pastoral relationship in that David refers to the Lord as his shepherd. The fact that he is our shepherd implies that we're dependent upon him as sheep. If you stop and think about it, it isn't really a very great compliment to be called a sheep. For sheep are dumb, dirty, defenseless, and completely dependent animals. However, if we're really honest with ourselves, there's a great deal of truth to the comparison. We do lack wisdom and strength. In ourselves, we lack real direction in life, and in fact are inclined to be self-destructive. Perhaps Isaiah said it best when he said, "All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way." If Jesus is to be our shepherd, we have to admit our need for him and in turn be willing to follow him. It's sometimes difficult to admit our own helplessness, but that is where we start. Once we admit that, we can enter into a personal relationship with our shepherd and experience all that he has for us. Ruth had this intimate and dependent relationship with her Lord, her shepherd. She recognized her need to follow him as his sheep, and it made all the difference in the world. David goes on to talk about the result of that relationship, of the difference it can make in our lives. David goes on to say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." The implication of this is that if anything or anyone else is our shepherd, we shall want. David says that we shall not want because our shepherd provides rest. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. The picture here is of sheep bedded down in the grassy meadows, having eaten their fill and now totally satisfied, and then being led by still waters. God likewise wants to give us rest in our inner being through spending time with him and feeding on his word. Ruth, up until her death, knew that calm and rest that Jesus alone can give. I pray that everyone here today has experienced that rest as well. It's especially important during this time of sorrow. Our shepherd not only provides rest, he also provides restoration. The psalmist says, "He restores my soul." For sheep, that restoration comes through food and water. For us, it comes when we come to know him, believe what he says, and act on his word. It was a restoration that Ruth experienced daily in her life. Our shepherd provides rest, restoration, and guidance. He leads us in paths of righteousness. Sheep are prone to wander away, no matter how obvious the path. Thus, they must depend upon and completely trust the shepherd. The paths of righteousness are those that conform to God's will and his word. He does this, notice the psalmist says, for his name's sake. He does it so that we might bring honor and glory to his name. Ruth walked in paths of righteousness in the way God wanted her to walk, and God's name was glorified as a result of it. We saw this, Carol and I saw this over and over again while we were in Jamaica with the team. It was just amazing how, well, the love that people had for her and the guidance that she knew, but also the guidance that she could give to others. Our shepherd also provides protection. That protection brings confidence. David says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." These last few years have been difficult for both Richard and Ruth. We actually thought that both of them were going to die during this time. God has graciously, he's here today, restored Richard. And earlier, Ruth also was able to return from a hospice home to her own home and continue on oxygen there. During this time, they held on through confidence in the one who is with them in the midst of that valley of darkness. His protection also brings comfort. David says, "Your rod which was used for protection, and your staff, which provided direction, they comfort me. Your rod and thy staff, they comfort me. God's protection and direction in these difficult times brought comfort to both Ruth and Richard and to their family and friends. Some see verses 5 and 6, which are the next two verses, moving from the picture of a shepherd providing for sheep to that of a host providing for his friends. And I think it's possible to see it both ways, and I'll kind of do that as we go through. Our shepherd host provides refreshment. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. The refreshment is there even in the midst of enemies such as fear, doubt, depression, and Satan's attempts to defeat us. Our shepherd host provides relief. David says, you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. In David's time, it was customary to anoint a guest with fragrant perfume and with a cup filled with a choice wine. Nothing was considered too good for the guest. Or it may refer to the shepherd anointing the head of a wounded sheep. David declares that God's care far surpasses anything like this. And our shepherd host provides goodness and mercy. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Ruth knew that she could count on God's goodness and mercy in every conceivable situation and every step of the way. I just lost my next page here somewhere. Found it. We can continue. Our shepherd host also provides eternal home, an eternal home for us. David ends by saying, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Ruth and Richard experienced God's refreshment and relief in these last difficult days. We can truly say that Ruth experienced God's goodness and mercy all the days of her life. And we know that she will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. She's now with her shepherd, who cared for her every step of the way, and will be with him forever. I want to close with reading the psalm, but putting Ruth's name in as the subject of it in light of what we've just said. The Lord was Ruth's shepherd. She did not want. He made her to lie down in green pastures. He led her beside still waters. He restored her soul. He led her in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though she walked through the valley of the shadow of death, she feared no evil, for you were with her. Your rod and your staff, they comforted her. You prepared a table before her in the presence of her enemies. You anointed her head with oil, her cup overflowed. Surely goodness and mercy followed her all the days of her life, and she shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.